everyone. Welcome to our podcast. If you're listening, that's great. And I know some of you might be watching as well. Today's topic is really about a particular case that I've worked on over the course of years that I think has a lot of lessons to learn. I think the lessons to be learned are, I'll say, threefold. One is how to give to children and beneficiaries appropriately and responsibly. Number two is how do we know if a client might be or a person might be taken advantage of? And then number three is just, I call like deathbed or somebody who's being forced to sign things when they didn't know. So those are the three. I'm going to share the story in a sense of backtracking. A woman died in 2009. She had died with about $8 million of assets. The person that I'm advising is one of the sons. So there's two sons. One son is in his 50s and tells me his mom passed away and she had about $8 million. And basically, he's waiting for his $4 million, thinking, okay, it's just going to come to me, right? It turns out it was a little bit different. When I first met him, when we found out what the distribution provisions were, I read the trust and I shared it with him. He was in outrage. He was so upset. And I share that because it does feel unfair. However, my point of this particular story is after, this person died 2009, the mom, now looking back at it, you realize that it was actually the right thing to do by mom. Okay. So I come to find out years later that my client, let's just call him John was already the type of person who had received various inheritances from aunts, uncles, grandparents, and already had blown them. Okay, I found that out after the fact, obviously not at the time. Mom had created a trust probably about 15 years before she died. So it wasn't something that happened, close to her death, where she had wanted to prevent that, right? She wanted to prevent John from just spending the money like instantly without money left over. So I read the terms of the trust to him, and why he was outraged is because the terms of the trust said half of it goes to his brother, which is, his brother is married and has kids. The other half was actually a quarter goes to grandchildren, which was his brother's kids, and then he received a quarter. Okay, so $2 million. But of his $2 million, he was only receiving 4% of the estate on a yearly basis. So you can imagine it was an outrage. She was so upset, and I can't believe my mom didn't give it to me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I was saying to him, John, this is what we have to work with. And we calculated the numbers, and it's not bad. So if you want to do easy math, 4% of 2 million is 80,000 for that very first year. The money was invested. The money was growing every single year. 4% turned into 90,000 a year, to 100,000 a year, up to like 120,000 a year eventually. Not a bad deal. So John received this income from his mom's trust every single year without having to pay tax on it, without having to earn it. He just got it. It's sort of like a pension that you didn't even work hard for. And he lived a pretty simple life, and he got that money, right? He also had his own assets. So this was, money that was inherited. I share that story with a lot of my clients because it's not a bad deal to give your kids money, but only give them a portion of it every year, especially for the size of $2 million. You can easily give somebody 4%, and invest it and beat them, beat it in the market, right? If the market makes 10% that year and you're investing, obviously 4% goes out to John, the other 6% stays in the trust and continues to grow on a compound interest situation. So anyway, he did, do fine, right? He got that money. I tell the story to people so that they can start thinking for themselves, like, how much does my kid really need? How much does he really need 2 million? Is it possible that he could blow it? He can get sued for money, and now all of a sudden that money's gone. He could be married one day, and then a year later it's divorce, and the person he marries just takes all of it, right? There's all sorts of possibilities that the money can go inadvertently to the wrong people. But instead, mom was smart and said, I don't want him to blow it, but I also don't want him to not have the money, right? So she got the bit of the cake and eat it too. And I really loved her estate plan, to be honest. As an estate planner, I just like when it's given to people in a responsible way. Okay, so that's one aspect. And it is sad. He did pass away recently. And that's part two of the story is he had a on and off girlfriend. Okay. At one point, he was not with her per se. Like when I first met with him, he had this girlfriend. Let's just call her Susan. Susan was somewhat okay, attentive, whatever. But there was something weird about her and the way she talked. And I felt a bit of again, I don't know, but I felt like there was a bit of like too much interest in his money and too much interest in his inheritance, which made me feel uncomfortable. So I'm like, what are you here for? Do you really love John, or is there a reason? Okay. So then fine, they broke up. I hadn't heard about her in a while. And sadly, John was diagnosed with cancer. And of course, he's alone. Susan comes back to his life and wants to spend time with him and is really attentive. Okay. To the point of like, of course, taking him to treatments and all that, which is all wonderful. So John was not alone during that time of need. I appreciate that. Good for him to have Susan by his side. But what she ended up doing to me was uncalled for. He did prepare an estate plan on his own, but she chose to take him to another attorney. And basically, I don't know if he had the wherewithal to even sign the documents. I don't know if he even understood what he was signing. But basically, the new documents say everything goes to her. Okay. I found that out while he was sick, and of course, I was like, okay, is that really what you would want, John? And at the time, of course, he was quite, he was sick, so it was hard for him to really understand what was going on. At the end of the day, when he passed, everything went to her. What I mean by that was the money that he had, which is a house and some savings, went to her. And I would have been like, okay, fine, whatever. She took care of him in his last days. The money that was from mom, his inheritance of 2 million, which did grow, it got up to 2.4 million by the time he passed, did go to his brother, which is what mom wanted, right? So mom said, yes, you can use this at 4% a year, but the rest of it goes to your brother, which is exactly what happened. It didn't get blown, and it stayed with the bloodline, which is the brother and future, and of course, in the future, the grandchildren. So that's the part of when he passed. In the meantime, what I'm going to share with you is like, that's the frustrating part was she made him go to a lawyer, sign his full estate to her. And like I said, his main money, which is again, a house and some savings, maybe $500,000, which isn't chump change, but it was certainly a good amount of money that she got. We find out that John's grandmother, she passed right before him. And she had a large estate. And she only had the 2 grandkids, which is John and his brother. So I don't know the exact dollars, but from a little bit of information, we find out grandma had about $10 million. So where I'm going with the story is because grandma only had the two kids, her half of that estate went to John, who later died as well. So John actually owned more, even though the money wasn't paid out yet. The estate of John received that $5 million. And guess who got that? Susan, right? So here she thought, oh, I'm getting a payday of $500,000. Her payday actually was another bonus lottery win, basically, when grandma's estate finally got paid out, which was about $5 million. Again, I don't know exact numbers, but it doesn't matter. I'm sharing this as an example. It's not even the exact numbers. And it's, certainly I want to protect everybody who's innocent and make sure that some of this information is not exact to the story. So anyway, at the end of the day, what I mean by this is give your money away in a responsible way. Make sure, watch your family members and your friends, close friends, about people that are around them that take advantage of them. Okay. Is this person really there for taking care of them? Or are they there to switch over the money to go to somebody else? Often clients are telling me, oh, you're crazy. That would never happen to my husband. That would never happen to my son. And it does. There's too many people out there that can easily wrap them around their fingers and just be like, let's get married and now it's going to give it to them. I used to be very optimistic and think people want, are mostly for the good, right? And now that I've been in this business a long time, I actually assume the worst first because I'm like, okay, what's your intention? Why do you really want to be friends? Or why do you even want to be, with this person? Are you really in love or are you really there for the money? And then the third thing I talked about was undue influence, right? She obviously took him in a time that wasn't necessarily his best time. He wasn't the most alert. He was going through treatments. So I worry about that when it comes to signing documents, even in our firm. I won't do it unless I know this person is lucid and has the mental capacity to do so. So be aware of your family members, be aware of their current mental state, because so many more scammers out there that can take advantage of them, and important to protect them and your family legacy as well. So that is my story. I know that was long, but I want you to be able to learn from a real life, example so that you can properly plan your own estate plan and your own legacy and protect your family. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.